mouth. Then they looking for trouble. Ran right up in the knowledge. Now they back in the huddle. Now they know we can fight. Content given every week. Me and Dr. Rip Shot. Keep on bringing the heat. Now they know that we hitting. And they know we ain't quitting. Yo, she mind the genius. Keep on bringing and giving. Unity, unity, unity. Cause they know we ain't stopping. And they know they got problems. And they ran out of options. If we know we got a problem, can't let it go unsolved. Brain learning, Afrocentric history, we see tomorrow. Karma is karma, I see what I say, I hear underwater. Till I see y'all fall off, then I bring y'all up on note. I'm back up on my client winners, 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 divine winners, client winners, client winner, client winners. I'm with you, ride with you, master teacher, create master client winners. You respect to the elder, client winners. Hi.
Let's go.
Except when I'm talking about Uncle Tom. I have not been declared. I have not cursed. I have not been violent. I have not confounded truth. I have not been impatient. I have not cursed to God. What up, though? How's everybody doing? How you doing, Marie Antoinette, DeAndre Price, and Tiny Riches? Silver Money Bags. What up, though? I'd like everybody to, that was a cut that was made by the genius, Yoshimod. Yoshimod has a beautiful website, and go to his website, go and, Spotify, buy some of his raps. Okay, this right here is very Afrocentric, but he has some very good raps. He's in tune with the streets. He's telling us the beat of the street. He's telling us what's going on in Houston, Texas. Please support Yoshimod. Go to his website and also go to Spotify. Well, today I'd like to say Happy Father's Day to all of you fathers out there, and it's a very important day because I know as a father myself, I have 5 boys and 1 girl, and I know that over the years, a lot of times, we forget the fathers. I mean, even, we'd rather give everything to mom, and I get a little bit more props now because my wife, she died in 2020. May God bless her in the Crystal City now, but so now they concentrate on me just a little bit more. But the point is that this is a wonderful Father's Day. Okay, one of the reasons that I'm having this live is because of the fact that I'm very disappointed in a lot of people. I've been looking at TV and they've been talking about Juneteenth. And many people have been talking about Juneteenth. They don't really understand Juneteenth. And the reason they don't understand Juneteenth is because of the fact that many of them are foreigners, or many of them, in a sense, are just don't understand what we went through. You see, many people around the world, they always feel that native Black Americans or foundational Black Americans are always upset, that we're always angry. We're always trying, in a sense, to make sure that people understand what happened to us, and they tell us to forget. But they don't tell the those other people. They don't tell the Jews to forget what happened to them during the Holocaust. They don't tell them to forget about the fact that millions of them were killed. They don't tell them to forget about any of their traditions. And yet they have the nerve to tell us, as foundational Black Americans, as Native Americans to this country, to forget about the maafa. Maafa is a Swahili word. Maafa in Swahili means destruction. And the reason that we call the African Holocaust or the slave trade maafa is because it was destruction. It was not only destruction to the Aboriginal Black people over here, it was destructive to African people worldwide. Because the fact, in a sense, is that it allowed the settlers to come here and to take this country away from us. Yes. Those people, in a sense, that we know as Europeans or that some people call whites, these people are settlers. They came here and they took this land away from us, but they didn't take it away from us without a fight. And I think that it's very important to understand what Juneteenth is about. And that's what we're going to do. Let me go into my presentation. You know, many people ask me why Native Blacks celebrate Juneteenth, and this is a very interesting question, because many people, they can't understand why we always want to make sure that people understand, the importance of this date. Granted, I grew up in Chicago. Growing up in Chicago, we never celebrated Juneteenth really until President Biden made it a holiday. We didn't really think about that stuff because, see, growing up in Chicago, it was a wonderful place to grow up. And the thing that made it a wonderful place to grow up is that in Chicago, everything was clear. White folks lived over there. Black folks lived over here. We grew up understanding that racism existed. We grew up understanding that if we were going to be successful, we had to fight for everything that we were going to get. We understood, in a sense, that we had to be able to, recognize the importance of our humanity. But we also had to learn to fight. Things was very wonderful in Chicago until around 1966. In 1966, the Catholic Church in what's called Inglewood on the south side, and in Woodlawn, that is also on the south side, at two different Catholic churches, these priests organized the two games that terrorized the foundation of Black American community, and they terrorize our community today. These Catholic priests in Inglewood, they allowed, in a sense, the rise of the Black disciples, Motown disciples, all type of disciples. And these disciples, in a sense, their colors, in a sense, were blue, gray, and stuff like that. But the point is this, is that at the same time in Woodlawn, another Catholic church, they organized the Blackstone Rangers. And so we find, in a sense, is that the Blackstone Rangers and the Black disciples were engaged in warfare. And in fact, many of the kids today belong to these gangs. So when we talk about violence in Chicago, when we talk about gang banging in Chicago was an import. It was an import from those priests that started the Blackstone Rangers in Woodlawn and that started the Black disciples in Inglewood. And today we're being terrorized, and these people have been shooting each other, killing each other. I mean, hey, I didn't even think I was going to get to be 21 back in the day because I knew I was going to die. Back in the day, to join the Black disciples or to join the Blackstone Rangers, you had to, in a sense, kill someone. And I was a neutron. I lived in a neighborhood where most of the people were not in gangs. And because we were not in gangs, That's what they came to prey upon and try to kill us. Luckily, on the bloody Halloween of 1967, I was out, and me and a friend of mine, we was going up to this girl's house, and she wasn't home, so we came back. We were coming back, and then we got shot at. I mean, I saw bullets fly past my head, and I wasn't in Vietnam. I was on prairie. But the point is this: is that remember, in a sense, when you see violence in Chicago today, that violence is the result not of Black people initiating this violence ourselves. Is because of the fact that the Catholic Church, yes, the Catholic Church helped form the Black Disciples and the Blackstone Rangers. In fact, at Nixon's inauguration, yes, at the inauguration of Nixon, they allowed the Blackstone Rangers to attend, just to show you how they was hooked up. So when you look at things in terms of destroying our communities, it's not always, in a sense, from inside, it's from outside. You know, why Juneteenth is important. Juneteenth should not be a day of just wearing T-shirts made in China and cooking barbecue. It must be a solemn day we teach our children and each other the history of slavery and how we fought to be free of chattel slavery. Very important to understand. You have to understand that in the United States, we were chattel slaves. Chattel slaves mean that we were considered the personal property of those people who own plantations or those people who own farms, you see. That means just like today, if I went to the store and I bought a jacket, that jacket is my personal property and I can do whatever I wish with it, you see. And that's what we were. We were personal property. We were considered just like a dog or a cat or a horse or a mule. That's what we were considered. But see, we fought in the Civil War to end chattel slavery. Yes, we are free of chattel slavery, but it's very important to remember that we continue to be POWs. We are the Black people of North America, the Black Native people of North America, the foundational Black Americans. FBA is not a group. FBA is not an organization. FBA is a lineage. A lineage is lineal descent from an ancestor, ancestry or pedigree. We are not just Africans. As a result, we are descendants of the African and Aboriginal Blacks who built the United States. It's very important. You know, the settlers, they've always tried to tell us that we're African people. Yes, we have African ancestry, but we're not all from Africa. And this is very important to understand. That's what makes us a unique people. That's what makes us think different from maybe other Black people around the world. You see, this was our land. We are native to the land. You see, granted, they took away our heritage. They took away our heritage and they gave it to the Red Indian. But that doesn't erase the fact that we know who and what we are. First, it must be stated that we have never waited for the settlers to give us a holiday. We made it do what it do. Very important. We made it do what we do. Everything we got, we fought for it. Immigrant Blacks and settlers tell us we should forget about the maafa, slavery, which led to our enslavement and suffering in this country, and the reason we fight for freedom and justice today. Today, some Black people, due to self-hate and ignorance, hate being Black. Yes, they hate being Black. As a result, they claim to be anything else but Black. They call themselves Pan-Africans. They call themselves Native American and Asian. These dumb Negroes are trying to make a revision of Black American history. None of these titles suit us because we are the foundational people of America. Yes, we are the foundational people of America. We were here before the red man, before the white man. We've been on these shores for 100,000 years. We are prisoners of war. What did Nellie Fuller? Nellie Fuller is our guide. If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. This is what Nellie Fuller taught us. We accept the fact that we live in a white supremacist society. In fact, we accept the fact that we live in a white supremacist world. We live in a world that's controlled by the white supremacists, the Western Europeans, who feel they control the whole earth. And in many respects, they do. What did Neely Fuller teach us? He taught us that the purpose for studying Black history is not to find out how great you were. It is to find out what mistakes were made. And that we should do, in a sense, in our current situation to make a change. This is what we have to think about. You see, we have to think about, in a sense, how we can take history and how we can use that history to make our life better, because we're prisoners of war. How do we become prisoners of war? In Africa, they sent slave traders over there. And as a result of fighting over there, they kidnapped the survivors and they brought them over here as prisoners of war. When we were Black Native Americans, they attacked our villages. And when they attacked our villages, they enslaved us to help grow rice and help grow sugar. We're POWs. We're POWs. The only problem is that although we were prisoners of war, they made us chattel slaves. Yes, they made us their personal property. We are taught a fake history of enslavement in the United States of America. We have been taught a fake history of slavery in the United States. This fake history claims that all foundational Black Americans came from Africa as slaves. This is a big lie. This lie was taught to us to try and inculcate in us genetic cowardice. What is genetic cowardice? Genetic cowardice is the inculcation of fear of white people while seeing other Black people as the enemy as a result of white supremacy. Yes, yes, yes. They want you to hate yourself. They want you to see other Black people as enemies. That's why the Catholic Church, yes, the Catholic Church, they had the nerve enough in 1966 to establish two different gangs, the Black Disciples, the Black Stone Rangers, and they encouraged them to fight each other. And Black people in Chicago have been fighting each other ever since. This is what the settler does. The settler wanted to make us hate each other instead of looking at the settler, who was the creator of this Holocaust that we've experienced. First chattel slaves, listen to this. The first chattel slaves were Aboriginal Blacks and Black Irish and Scotsmen. What are you talking about, Doctor? What are you talking about, Dr. Winters? The Irish ain't Black. You're right. The Irish ain't Black today. But that don't mean they wasn't Black in the past. In the United States, it was a different organization of the slave plantation. You had master, the white overseer, and the Negro driver. Thusly, the driver might administer punishment upon their fellow slaves, but it was clear to the rest of the slaves he was forced to administer the punishment. Yes, 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 yes. See, this arrangement resulted from the fact that the chattel slaves in the United States of America began as Aboriginal people defeated in wars by settlers, or Black Irish and Scotsmen defeated in wars after 1649 in Scotland and Ireland by Oliver Cromwell. As a result, the slave masters could not count on Aboriginal or Baradanacs. That's the name of the original Black people in Britain. They couldn't count on Aboriginal and Baradanac slaves to punish their kinsmen. That's why, in a sense, you see, they didn't do it. The first sub-Saharan Africans who came to the USA were POWs, enslaved as a result of slave raiding. It's very important to understand. The way, in a sense, that slavery was organized in the United States, it, in a sense, created a feeling among foundational people that we have to fight the settler, we have to fight the enemy. But what did he do in the Caribbean? In the Caribbean, you see, and under colonialism, there were not enough Europeans, in a sense, to really keep their eyes on all the black people in Africa and the Caribbean. So what they did, in a sense, is that they had the black master, but the black master, in a sense, would have black people carry out the punishment of the people. They had black people in the military in Africa. And as a result, what this did is that this inculcated in black people in Africa and black people in the Caribbean to see as their enemies, not the settlers, not the Europeans who was behind everything. All they saw was the fact is that the European had that black person whooping their ass. They had that black person beating them, that black person shooting them if they got out of line. And this, in a sense, created among, I think, Caribbean blacks and African blacks, it created among them what's called a genetic cowardice. And this genetic cowardice led to them believing, in a sense, that the European was almost like a white god and that they better watch out for the other black man. But luckily in America, they didn't allow us to do that. In America, what they did is that they made it clear to us that the European was in control, the European would punish you, and the European would dominate you. And this is beautiful. What are you saying? Why is this beautiful? It's beautiful because growing up in the United States, you understand that everything is black and white. Everything is black and white. The Black Indian slave trade decimated the Black Indian community. Between 1670 and 1715, an estimated 40,000 to 50,000 Black Native Americans, they don't really know, were sold into slavery in the Caribbean. Most of these slaves were blacks from the Carolinas, just North Carolina, South Carolina. The Europeans provided the Black Indians with smallpox, blankets, guns, cheap goods to purchase slaves. See, what they did is this. Many of the Black Indians, and when they met you, they would give you a gift because that was a way to show their humanity and to show, in a sense, that hey, we could be friends. And so what happened is that the Europeans, even before they began to settle in the United States, they went among the Black Indians and they would give them gifts. They would give them blankets. But the thing about those blankets was that those blankets was carrying smallpox. And so what they did is that before even the first English colonists settled in the Americas, they had been killing off the Indians because the Indians, in a sense, were dying. But they didn't know that these blankets were carrying smallpox. They didn't know that they were getting gifts from the Europeans that was really harming them. Between 1670, the majority of Black Native Americans sold into slavery by white and Indian slave traders were the Choctaw and Yamasee, another Carolina tribes. Black Indians like the Yamasee and Pequot became slaves after losing wars. During the colonial days, the Europeans would go to war against Black Native Americans to get slaves. As a result, entire Black tribes were murdered, and the captured Black Native Americans were made slaves on American and Caribbean plantations. It is a myth, and this is something I want you to listen to. See, I was taught this all my life. I was taught this lie, but it's really a myth. It's a myth that many slaves in the USA were first broken into slavery in the Caribbean and then transported to the USA. The Caribbean plantation owners were always desperate for slaves, so any slave taken to the West Indies remained there. Very important to understand this. But they taught us that, the slaves were broken in the Caribbean. Then the slaves, in a sense, was after they had learned how to make it in a slave society, they were brought to the United States from the Caribbean. That's a damn lie. That's a damn lie. In many states, the enslavement of red Indians were outlawed. Listen now. In many states, the enslavement of red Indians were outlawed. As a result, when some settlers needed slaves, they would attack a village of Black Indians, capture the survivors, and sell them to the West Indies, and then sell back to the USA and declare these Indians had been slaves from the Caribbean. Yes, that's what they did. They'd attack a Black village, Black Indian village, put all the slaves on the boat, and then sail the boat to the Caribbean. They wouldn't land. They wouldn't land in the Caribbean. They would just sail to the Caribbean, restock the boat, then come back and then say, hey, we got some slaves we bring from the Caribbean. They didn't bring no slaves from the Caribbean. It was Black Indians. And see, the European has always made laws just so he can break them. Yes. He makes laws so he could break them. Because of the fact that it was against the law to hold an Indian as a slave, they had to take him to the Caribbean and bring him back and say that they were born in the Caribbean and that they had always been slaves. And everybody just went wink, 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 wink. They knew it was a lie, but they went along with the lie. The Native American slave trade decimated the Black Native American community. Between 1670 and 1750, and as I say, the estimates are all over the place. But it's an estimated 50,000 to 100,000 Black Native Americans were sold in slavery in the Caribbean. Most of these slaves were black Native Americans from the Carolinas. And if it was 100,000 slaves, who's to say it wasn't 200,000 or 300,000? They don't know. They didn't count. They didn't count. All they wanted was some people to work on those sugar plantations in Bermuda, Jamaica. Yes. It was the farming skills of the black Native American that made them valuable as slaves in the United States and Caribbean. Sadly, many Mongoloid and black Native Americans stole the black Indians into slavery, especially the Choctaw. The Choctaw and Chickasaws held slaves in bondage to work on their plantations. But most other black Native Americans welcomed Africans into their villages as free men and women. Africans and black Indians were sold at the same slave markets. You can see. You see a black Indian woman, see her with a straight hair, they sold her ass. And then you see a sub-Saharan African that's selling her too. They didn't care. They didn't care. As long as you were black, they felt you should be their chattel. In African colonies in the Caribbean, whites were a minority. As a result, they served as lords of the land. They allowed their slaves to inflict punishment over their fellow slaves. This ingrained in many colonized Africans and Caribbean people the idea that the white man was a demigod, all-powerful, while the black people who punished them as slaves or served in the militias in Africa were the real enemies. Things were different in the USA. Yes, sirs. In the USA, the settler made it clear they were in charge. Oh, yes. Look at his pictures. Let's look at the pictures of what they did. They want to make sure, see? Virginian luxuries. Virginian luxuries. Look, what was the Virginian luxury? The Virginian luxury was that they could rape a black woman, and they could beat a black man's butt, and maybe they could also rape him too. You see, this is what they felt. But what makes it so terrible is that every time, right now, go to Google, put in Google slavery, and you're going to pop up with a picture of the white man beating a black woman's ass. They especially made it important that they should whip the black woman because they knew that you, sister, you are the queen. You are the goddess. It's through you that all things are made possible. And that's why they always made sure that they made the black woman punished the most. And they always wanted to have her children watch her being beaten. And they want her children to watch her being beaten because they wanted to ingrain in us that whole idea that they had all power over us and you couldn't do nothing. But black people didn't accept that. Black people didn't accept the fact over here in America. They didn't accept the fact that you were hopeless. You know, a lot of people don't know, in every plantation. And that's what I liked about the movie Emancipation. Emancipation, a beautiful movie. It stars Will Smith in Emancipation. You know, he plays a slave that goes off. He tells his wife he's coming back. He goes off. He suffers a lot of punishment, but he finally joins the Union Army and he comes back. See, that's a love story to me. And the reason it's a love story is because we don't really have movies where black men, in a sense, and black women can love each other. Where black men, in a sense, when they keep their promises, you see, and that's what they did. But see, on most plantations, people don't even know. You know, they always make you think, if you saw Roots, you think, oh, black people on the plantation living all clean, living all happy. No. On most plantations, they usually had a black man with a pole stuck up from his ass up through his mouth. If they didn't have a black man on a pole, they all had the head of a black person. These heads were usually hung as soon as you came into the plantation. Yes, they were hung from trees. If they weren't hung from trees, they'd be stuck on pikes like these heads. Yes. Slavery was not kind. Slavery was not something that was good to us. Stop it. Stop believing that slavery was nice. You know, Dr. Joy DeGruy, she wrote a good book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Dr. DeGruy addresses the residual impacts of trauma on African descendants in the Americas. Yes. You see what they used to do to us? Beating our women, beating our children, cutting off black men heads and putting them around the plantation. to try to instill fear in us. But it didn't instill fear in us. It instilled in us, in a sense, the idea that we had to fight for everything we got. But Dr. DeGroote, what did she do? She developed this whole understanding of post-traumatic slave syndrome, PTSS. She laid the groundwork for understanding how the past has influenced the present and opens up the discussion of how we can eliminate non-productive attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors developed to cope and survive the traumatic periods of capture and transport. Yes, yes, yes. Many of us suffer from post-traumatic slave syndrome. But think about this. Even though black people have been held on plantations, they have been slaves for hundreds of years. When we were freed from chattel slavery, many of these black people went on to become congressmen. Many of these black people started businesses. Many of these black people started their own farms. That's to show that although we may have had PTSS, we didn't allow the PTSS to stop us. We didn't allow it to make us feel that we couldn't do what we do. We had to do what we do. See, because, you know, as I told you, they never teach our history. You know, they taught you about three slave rebellions, Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner, you see. But that's just a lie. It was more than three. They only teach you about the damn slave rebellions that failed. It was 250 slave revolts. Herbert Aptheicher in American Negro Slave Revolts listed 250 revolts against whites. The first Maroons fought whites in 1526. In 1526, blacks overthrew the Spanish colony of Lucas Vasquez de Leon. Even though there were 500 Spanish and only 100 blacks in the colony, along with their Indian friends, the Spanish were forced to return to Haiti. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. We are the foundational people, the native blacks of America. The enslaved people had many reasons to flee their plantations. The causes behind people becoming Maroons might be the overseer's whip. Maybe the master was celebrating the 4th of July, or they heard a powerful sermon. Enslaved people knew what freedom was. They want to make you, if you look at Roots, oh, he's on the party, having a good time. Hell no. We didn't like enslavement. Solomon Northrop, a freeman kidnapped by slavers and sold into slavery, wrote in 12 Years a Slave, and I quote, "They enslaved people do not fail to observe the difference between their own condition and the meanest white man's, and to realize the injustice of laws which place within his power not only to appropriate the profits of their industry, but to subject them unmerited and unproved punishment without remedy or the right to resist." Yes, 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 yes. That's why they owe us reparations. They owe us reparations. The Maroons usually made their settlements in the swamps and badlands or among Indians. They were often chased in these areas by dogs and men with guns. The Maroons might hide in the forest until his anger towards his master might subside, or he needed some food. Other enslaved people stayed in the swamps and woods with their families for weeks, months, and years. Or they followed the North Star to Canada to gain independence and freedom. Maroons were often allied with the Indians. Maroons lived in many Yamasee communities. The Yamasee was a tribe of Black Native Americans who originally lived in Florida and southern Georgia until they were forced to migrate north into South Carolina by the Spanish in the 16th century. The Yamasee was part of the Mahoguin Confederacy. This was a confederacy of Mongoloid and Black Native Americans. You know, they don't ever mention the fact that we started all those confederacies, the Iroquois, the Muskogee. Look at this. Look at this picture. Look at this picture. Here you can see that foundational people were not just, in a sense, one group. You see the majority. Look at those brothers in the front. You see that red bandana over their head? That red bandana that signified their determination, you see. Look at them in the front. They had the red bandana and they had the tomahawk, baby. Don't bring me no axe. Give me a tomahawk, baby. And then look at the other brother. He got his shield and he got on a kufi hat. And then we had another brother. He's got on, in a sense, a turban. We were foundational. We were not, in a sense, cowards. Oh, the great swamp. Whoa, the great Dismal swamp. Listen to me. Between 1700 and 1856, thousands of Maroons lived in the great Dismal swamp of Virginia and North Carolina. Yes. The first Maroons to settle in the Dismal swamp lived on an island in the marshes called Messix, a dry and high part of the swamp. Listen to that. These black people, in a sense, built their own community. And they had this community for 156 years. Yes, 156 years. See? That was our first Black Wall Street, our first Rosewood. We build communities. We seek independence. The Great Dismal Swamp Maroons were both runaway slaves and freemen. It was a major route on the Underground Railroad. The Seminole War began in 1837. The white militiamen reported that the Maroon fighters were, and I quote, the most formidable foe, more bloodthirsty, active, and revengeful than the Indians. The three Black Seminole Wars cost the United States government $40 million. The Seminoles killed 1,500 white troops and tens of slave catchers. General Jessup, commander of the soldiers during the war, stated that black people were very, in a sense, forceful fighters. Yes, we're not cowards. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for you people that come from Africa. I'm sorry for you people that come from the Caribbean. We were not cowards. If you didn't treat a black person good, they might put some glass in your food. They might go out in the damn forest, go out in the woods and find some poison their ass. Burn down their house, burn down the plantation. We didn't always just kiss butt. In relation to the Civil War, we have two different stories about the role of FBA during the war. The usual story has FBA, foundational Black Americans, only digging trenches and performing menial tasks for the Union Army. But we have the movie Glory, in which soldiers of the 54th Massachusetts Infantry Regiment attacked Fort Wagner, a Confederate bastion on Morris Island, South Carolina, in which half the FBA soldiers died in the attack on July 18, 1863. Yes. They want to, as I told you before. They told us about the three slave rebellions that failed. They don't tell you about the other 247. They talk about, in a sense, what happened at Fort Wagner because they want to show what these black people, they lost. But they don't talk about the wins. Very important to understand this. This is a psyops game. It's a game, in a sense, to make you feel that you have no agency. And that's a lie. You do have agency. What was our real role in the Civil War? Around 200,000 foundational Black Americans fought in the Civil War as United States colored troops, USCT. During the Civil War, 179, some say 189, Black men served as soldiers in the United States Army, and 19,000 served in the Navy. But this is something they don't tell you. An additional 200,000 FBA civilians, men and women, they hauled away the dead, they dug the dishes, they cooked the meals, and they did other tasks. That meant that you had over 179,000 black men going bone on bone, bayonet to bayonet, bayonet to bayonet to fight for our freedom. They didn't at first want us in the Civil War, you see. They couldn't stand to put us in the Civil War because they did not want black people to have guns. It's always been this problem. Europeans and white people have always had this problem. Don't give the black man a gun. Don't give him a gun. But they had to give us a gun during the Civil War because they were losing. FBA began fighting the Civil War as early as 1862. In the fall of 1862, there were at least 3 Union regiments of African Americans raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. The 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Louisiana Native Guards. These units later became the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Infantry Corps d'Afrique, and then the 73rd, 74th, and 75th United States Colored Infantry. The 1st South Carolina Infantry, African descent, was not officially organized until January 1863. However, 3 companies of the regiment were on coastal expeditions as early as November 1962. They would become the 33rd United States Colored Infantry, similarly the 1st Kansas Colored Infantry, later the 79th New United States Colored Infantry, was not mustered into service until January 1863. Even though the regiment had already participated in the action at Island Mound, Missouri on October 27, 1862. These early unofficial regiments received little federal support, but they showed the strength of African Americans' desire to fight for freedom. Yes, 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 yes. Thousands of black people, thousands of black men joined the Union Army. The Union Army was getting their ass kicked. The Union Army, in a sense, they were having a tough time with the Confederates because many of the Union troops came from urban areas in the North. Because they came from urban areas in the North, they didn't really know how to live off the land. They really, in a sense, didn't know how to really shoot. And so a lot of that had to come from training, you see. But this wasn't a problem with black people. Black people had always had to live off the land. Even free black people had to learn to live off their land. And the reason we had to learn off the land is because we had to know how to survive. The first people, in a sense, to really fight were the Gullah Geechee. The Gullah Geechee, they were the first people to come out of the Dismal swamps and the other swamps and join the Union Army. The first FBA recruits were free FBA, Foundational Black Americans, and Gullah Geechee in 1862. Many of these men were unofficially allowed to enlist in the Union Army after President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, January 1st, 1863. Black soldiers were officially allowed to participate in the war. At the beginning of the Civil War, free black men tried to enlist in the United States military units. Yes, they did. They were, however, not allowed to join because there was a 1792 federal law that barred foundational black Americans from bearing arms for the United States Army. Again, as I told you, they've always had this problem. Yet the Second Amendment said you could have guns and you could have the freedom to own a gun, but they have never, ever wanted to see black men with guns. Some generals refused to obey this law. General John C. Fremont in Missouri and General David Hunter in South Carolina issued proclamations that free slaves in their military regions were permitted to enlist, but their superiors revoked their orders. You see, it was a conflict. They didn't really want us to fight, but they had to let us fight because, as I said, those northern white folks, they were so scared, they was running back. They was deserting, they was running back home. They was used to kicking people's butts, but they had to kick your butt as a group. They didn't understand how to be a man and fight bone on bone, bayonet to bayonet. But we did. We fought. We died. The Second Confiscation and Militia Act is what really, in a sense, led to a lot of black people being able to join the military. The action of these generals led to Congress passing the Second Confiscation and Militia Act, freeing enslaved people from enslavers who were in the Confederate Army on July 17, 1862. 2 days later, slavery was abolished in the territories of the United States. And on July 22, 1862, President Lincoln presented the preliminary draft of the Emancipation Proclamation to his cabinet. So we see that even before Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation, many of the generals, so they could get more troops and also harm the Confederates, they were already allowing black men to fight. You see, yes, they used this as a pawn, but even though they used this as a pawn, many black people was happy to be able to join the military. Many black people were happy to join the Union Army because they saw this as a chance to fight for their own freedom. Do you understand that? You can understand the desire of a people to be free of chattel slavery. And yet these men were able, in a sense, to go out and fight and to take upon themselves the burden of freeing the race. General Order number 143, War Department Adjutant General's Office, Washington, May 22nd. This is some of the things that said, this was the thing that allowed us to fight in the Civil War. But look at that brother, Look at that brother on the left-hand side. That's what it was like on the slave plantation. It wasn't like roots. They didn't have all those fine clothes. They gave you one outfit a year. And you used to wear that outfit the entire year. So of course they would be raggedy. A lot of people say, these FBA people, all they do is think about clothes. All they do is think about shoes. All they think about, in a sense, is looking good, smelling good, and doing what we do. Do what you do. This is what we came from. Why should we forget that? This is where we came from. But he joined, in a sense, the Union Army, became a drummer boy. And there you can see him on the other side. But what do we have? What do we have on the plantation? Why do you think, look at that boy on the left-hand side. Why do you think we would want to stay there? Why do you think we want to forget? People tell us forget. People tell us stop thinking about what happened to black people during slavery. Stop thinking about how you foundationals, in a sense, had to suffer 300-400 years of enslavement and then Jim Crow and all that other stuff. No. That's why we wanted to fight. United States colored troops were Union Army regiments during the American Civil War that primarily comprised African Americans, with soldiers from other ethnic groups also serving in the USCT units. There were some black people. I know I've talked to Dr. Short, and Dr. Short tells me that one of his ancestors fought in a Union regiment, and it wasn't an all-black regiment. So then black people, not only in a sense, fought in entirely black regiments, but also other regiments. You see, a Union general said, here the Negro stood in the full glare of the greatest searchlight, part and parcel of the grandest armies ever mustered upon this continent, competing side by side with the best and bravest of the Union Army against the flower of the Confederacy, the best and bravest of Lee's army, and losing nothing in the contrast. Using nothing in the contrast. Back in those days, you had to charge the enemy. And when you charge the enemy, the average is three of the people charging are going to die, whereas only one of the person that's defending of sight is going to die. So they knew the odds. They knew that they had in a sense a 75% chance that they were going to die, and yet these brothers would still charge. They would still run and charge those weapons. They would still charge the enemy and fight to free us from chattel slavery. But Nellie Fuller, he said that we have to have a code of conduct. Yes, we have to have a code of conduct. It was Nellie Fuller, in a sense, who taught Frances Wellesley the great things that she's taught us from, in a sense, the ISIS papers, you see. But see, Nellie Fuller gives us a code. He gives us a code. And what is the code? Stop snitching. Stop name calling. Stop cursing. Stop gossiping. Stop being discourteous. Stop stealing. Stop robbing. Stop fighting. Stop killing. Stop squabbling. Do and use the code. You gotta use the code. If you don't use the code, you're not gonna be, in a sense, successful, because we're prisoners of war here. FBA's Foundation of Black Americans are prisoners of war. We're prisoners of war because our ancestors were defeated after armed conflicts with English settlers in North America. Number two, Oliver Cromwell's suppression and genocide of the Broadnacks, the Black Irish and Scotsmen, between 1649 and 1660. And then the West Africans were defeated by other Africans and wars and sold to the Europeans during the Atlantic slave trade. Yes. Yes. All three of these populations were made chattel property as enslaved people. Our mixture on the plantation and segregated free Black communities led to the rise of the foundational Black American lineage. Stop. 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 Stop thinking you're entirely free. We're prisoners of war, POWs. The only thing the Civil War did was it stopped chattel slavery. Thus, the FBA are born in captivity and oppressed by our captors. But FBA cannot prove white supremacy exists because as a prisoner of war, we are officially, I repeat, we are officially defined as a people by the white supremacists. Thusly, the mere declaration that the foundational Black American lineage exists is a revolutionary act, yes. When we labeled ourselves foundational Black Americans, that was a revolutionary act because it is an identity not sanctioned by our captors. Yes, yes. Do you know what that means to name yourself? They call us a Negro, colored people, Negro people. But for us to declare that we're foundational Black Americans, because we're the foundation of this country. Truth in a system of white supremacy is therefore whatever the white man says truth is. I'm sorry. This is why most Blacks rarely accept a Black person as an authority in anything, unless the Black person is first recognized as an authority by the white man. That's right. That's right. We've been conditioned. Because foundational Black Americans are POWs, they suffer from cognitive dissonance because of white supremacy's ability to define words. Cognitive dissonance exists because under the system of white supremacy, reality is defined as whatever whites say it is. Yes, yes. The best evidence of white supremacy, according to Fuller, is the failure of words to be properly defined, e.g. race is a biological fiction. They tell you race is a biological fiction. Let's look here. There's some Caucasians, yeah. And in the middle, we see some Africans, yeah. And there's some Mongoloids when we move from left to right. But they tell you that race is a biological fiction. That is a lie. I can look at you and tell if you're Caucasian. I can look at you and tell if you're Black or African. I can look at you and tell if you're Mongoloid. But the settlers, the white supremacists, they tell you that race is a biological fiction. And many of us accept it. Many of us accept this because we love a lie, you see? As long as we can feel that we're accepted by the settlers. Frederick Douglass, December 31st, 1862. This is a very important day. This is a very, very important day. December 31st, 1862 was a day for poetry and song. A new song, these cloudless skies, this balmy air, this brilliant sunshine are in harmony with the glorious morning of liberty about to dawn up on us. And that's because of the fact that on January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation was supposed to come into being. Yes, yes, yes. Lincoln was going to free the slaves. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are henceforward shall be free. But this didn't apply to all Black people, all the slaves in North America. It only applied to the states that had seceded from the Union, United States. They left slavery untouched in the loyal border states, Kentucky, West Virginia, Delaware. Yes, yes. The Emancipation Proclamation did not free all the slaves. This is something that you have to understand. It was just a piece of paper. They only wanted to free those slaves that were under and within the Confederate States. They only wanted to free the people, in a sense, who were rebelling against the United States. Black people in Delaware, black people in West Virginia, black people in Kentucky. That didn't free them. They were still slaves. And not only that, but when they went to the emancipation, they expected you to, in a sense, stay on the plantation. You didn't know that, did you? Just because they said you were free, that didn't mean that you could leave that plantation. They wanted you to stay on that plantation and keep working for your master. The only thing was that the master would determine how much you would be paid. That means he could have paid you a nickel, a penny. What the hell was that? That was still slavery. The emancipation did not free all the slaves. You better remember that. You better remember that. Stop. Stop teaching your children that the Emancipation Proclamation freed black people. It only freed those black people in the Confederate States. Since 1863, many FBA have celebrated the 1st of January as Emancipation Day. Since the 1st of January 1863 was the Emancipation Proclamation. And that's when it went into effect. Yes. We have many celebrations. Stop it. Stop thinking that we don't understand history. Stop thinking that we don't understand what's important. Since 1866, the people of Charleston and other parts of the South have celebrated the first day of January as Emancipation Day. We didn't do that up in Chicago because, hey, we recognized right away that we knew right away we wasn't entirely free up here. We knew what part of Chicago we could go into, and we knew in a sense that if we went to a street called Cicero and we were caught out there on Cicero after 12 a.m., there's a good chance you were going to be murdered. We knew we couldn't go around Mayor Daley's house because we knew that was a place, in a sense, where if white people caught you by yourself, they would murder you. We learned early. But black people still said that, the Emancipation Proclamation, it did free those people down in Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. But it didn't free the people in Delaware, Kentucky, and some of the other border states. Always remember that the emancipation did not free all the slaves. And so, people always think FBA were freed by the Emancipation Proclamation. And they're supposed to get 40 acres and a mule. And, remember the Special Order 15. That's why we have the Juneteenth holiday today. But let's look at the Emancipation Proclamation. The Emancipation Proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious state, very important, it says rebellious states, are and henceforth shall be free. It applied only to states that had seceded from the United States, leaving slavery untouched in the loyal border states. But there was a Special Order 15, and this Special Order 15 is deep, you see, because Special Order 15 was an order that was instituted by the generals as they began to defeat the southern areas. This order explicitly called for the settlement of black families on confiscated land. Yes. It encouraged free men to join the Union Army to help sustain their newly won liberty, and designated a general officer to act as the inspector of settlements. Inspector General Rufus Saxton would police the land and work to ensure legal title of the property for the black settlers. In a later order, Sherman also authorized the Army to loan mules to the newly settled farmers. But it was revoked by President Johnson. Yes. So remember, it was not federal government policy that gave black people 40 acres and a mule. It was the generals, as they began to conquer various parts of the South, they would allow the slaves on those plantations, in a sense, to take control of those plantations, and they allowed them to take that to be their own land. And in fact, they even gave them mules, you see. But after President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, President Johnson took all that away, because President Johnson, he was a slave owner himself. He didn't want to see black people be totally free. It's very important you understand this. It's very important you understand this. So you see that under Special Order 15, black people, in a sense, were truly free. The foundational black people who were given land and given a mule, they were able, in a sense, to work that land and to become independent farmers. But only for a while, because President Johnson, after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, he, in a sense, he took it away. But let's look at General Order 13. General Order 13 was an order that was made on June 19, 1865. And this is what Juneteenth is all about, because see, Juneteenth goes back to this fact is that the people in Texas, they say, we're giving them freedom. General Order number 3 says, the people are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between therein becomes that between employer and hired labor. You see what they said? They said that these black people who were given their freedom, quote unquote, in Texas, they were supposed to be the laborers, and that their former masters were their employers. But listen to what else it says. This is your Order 15, your General Order 13. The freemen are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect a military post and that they will not be supported in either way or to go elsewhere. So in other words, yes, they told them they were free. Yes. They told them they were free, but they didn't want them to lead a plantation. They wanted them to stay on the plantation. And now, come on, now if you're the master, come on, you're the master. And now the military said, well, you got to give your former slaves, you they employer now, you got to pay them a wage. You couldn't tell them what to pay you. They could pay you whatever they wanted to pay you. Do you see? It was always a trick in the game. It's always a trick in the game. Yes, they freed them, but they wanted to make sure that they stayed around to make sure that it didn't help the white folks, the good white folks. Because remember, Juneteenth is very important, but in reality, family, it was the 13th Amendment passed 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation that really outlawed slavery forever. Yes. But Juneteenth is important, you see, to celebrate Juneteenth. And this is important. And it's still important because of the fact that it does represent a semblance, because it did represent freedom from what? Chattel slavery. Special order, this special order in Texas on Juneteenth, June 19th, in a sense, 1865, it freed them from chattel slavery. But it did not free them from being what? Prisoners of war. To celebrate Juneteenth, we must have a tradition that suits the occasion. Since it was made possible because of blacks fighting in the Civil War. Sadly, most people don't know our role as Maroons in the Civil War. They believe the FBA are weak and that Abraham Lincoln freed us because of the goodness of his heart. That's not true. It should be a day in which we discuss with our children our history as enslaved people and how we fought to free ourselves from chattel slavery. Yes. Tomorrow when you barbecue, tomorrow when your family is together, you should start to talk about what happened to us during slavery. Not because it means that we are always wanting to be feeling sorry for ourselves, but you talk about the fact that we were slaves, but how we fought for our own freedom, how 200,000 black men took guns, joined the army, and they fought for our freedom. You should tell your kids that we were Maroons, that we didn't always accept slavery, that we've always been fighters, and that we're still fighters today. This is what you should do. This is what you should do tomorrow. Yeah, barbecue. But you got to spend some time with your children. You guys got to spend some time talking to each other about our role in our own freedom from chattel slavery. We stopped being the property of those people. To celebrate Juneteenth, we must have a tradition that suits the occasion. Since it was made possible because of blacks fighting the Civil War to free themselves, it must have a cultural significance. Yes, it must have a cultural significance. As part of that barbecue, we must also eat hoe cakes and collard greens. What are you talking about? Hoe cakes and collard greens. Yes, 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 yes. Back in the day, we used to make hot water cornbread. We got some cornmeal. We boiled some water, put in some salt, and then we fried their mothers on a damn hoe. See that picture in the middle? That was a hoe. And we always, and a lot of us would eat collard greens. I'll be honest. I think collard greens have too much texture to me, but most of us love collard greens. And so while we barbecue, also cook some damn hoe cakes. Cook some hot water cornbread and collard greens. Why? The hoe cake is the bread of life. That's why you eat the hoe cake. The hoe cake is the bread of life. And the collard greens are what? The collard greens are substance from the soil. So on Juneteenth, when you barbecue, you also cook some hot water cornbread. You also cook some collard greens and pay homage to our ingenuity. Pay homage to our abilities to survive. We survived the Middle Passage. We survived the Holocaust. We survived the maafa. In conclusion, FBA have a great history of struggle to be free. As a result, the settlers have never given us anything that we didn't fight for. This is our land. We are of the soil and founded the tradition and culture of these United States. Yes. Yes, stop it. Stop letting people tell you that you have no culture. American culture is your culture. We created the foods. Macaroni, fried chicken, all that good stuff. We created the art. We the ones who made those beautiful rails, that metal working down south, and built those beautiful white houses on the plantation. We're the ones who made the music. All American music is ours. And see, what is also part of our culture? Also part of our culture is creating the mechanisms that give America its civilization. We invented it. You see, we made the telephone work. We made the electric light bulb work. We're the ones who made the electric trains that ran all throughout these cities. We're the ones who invented the chips that now they want to make the world work. It was a brother who made, in a sense, it possible for us to use the internet. The internet used to be a system that they were going to use in the event of an atomic war. Sure, Gates is making money. I know that everybody is using, in a sense, Microsoft Word, and they're using all these various programs. There's a brother who did that. We just didn't get the money. American culture is our culture, family. Stop it, stop it, stop it. The Europeans, their music is the opera. Thank you. They brought their culture from Europe and tried to plant it over here. And that's what they see as their superior culture. But American culture, the food, the drink, the inventions, we did it all. That's why we're the foundational. That's why we're the native blacks of America. As a result, native blacks should celebrate Juneteenth because it is a tradition that we created to celebrate our fight to be free from chattel slavery. Yes, yes. That's what we should celebrate because it celebrates our fight to be free of chattel slavery. And this is something that people don't understand, you see. Deborah Ann, thanks for being here. Bobby Jefferson, Katrina Prater, Tonaz Fez, thank you all for coming. But see, it's very important that tomorrow after you do your barbecue, take time to think about the importance of Juneteenth. Take time to remember that we're only, in a sense, here because of the fact that we fought for what we desired, you see. We are free of chattel slavery, yes. We're no longer chattel slaves. We're no longer nobody's property. But we're still prisoners of war. And we had to continue to fight for justice. We had to continue to fight for full freedom. We had to continue to teach our children that they must be, in a sense, engaged in combat so that they can have a great and a luxurious future. We are the only slaves in the history of the world. We are the only people in the history of the world that were slaves, that they felt in a sense they could treat us like a piece of ish. And yet we fought for our freedom from chattel slavery. You see? The only reason, in a sense, that they come against us is because of the fact they know that they allow us to be able to be free and independent. They allow us to be able to have the money and the resources, be able to build up our communities like we've done at in a sense, Black Wall Street, Rosewood, South Side of Chicago, Harlem, Illinois, Harlem, New York. They know that they allow us. That's why they don't want to give us reparations, but they're going to give us reparations. But they don't want to give us reparations because they know by having reparations, we can be independent. By having reparations, we can move and make things further. But remember that tomorrow is to celebrate Juneteenth. And Juneteenth is a celebration that we must all honor. We must have it as a solemn day. That's our 4th of July. And it's a freedom that we earn. You guys have a great day, great evening. Happy Father's Day again, and keep your head up and understand that God is our only anchor. God is our future. Thanks for coming.